Meeting will come to order. Welcome to the work session. And tonight, Mr. Young is going to be leading us in our pledge.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. We have some weather moving in, so I suspect we won't dally tonight. So, any questions regarding the agenda? Okay, hearing none. Any questions regarding the consent agenda? Okay, and we'll have section for recognition tomorrow night.
All right. Colonel Houchins will do that one.
And then number 8 is the scope.
Miss Joyce has contacted the students for tomorrow night. Do you want me to read those in case somebody's listening?
Please.
This is introduction of the 2015 Tennessee School Board Association Scope Student Delegates, and they meet at MTSU and kind of go through a student congress on politics and education, and that will be March 9th, 2015. And the following delegates we have paid to attend is Blackman High School, Megan Gardner; Blackman High School, Nerida Kalexo; Central Magnet, Waja Chandra; Central Magnet, Nash Binkley; Oakland High School, Cameron Bueller; Oakland High School, Jordan Fullerton; Siegel High School, Ty Stewart; Siegel High School, Brianna Wheeler; and Smyrna High School, Lauren Schumacher. And the chaperone will be Allison Powell from Central Magnet School. But Miss Michaels has contacted all of them for tomorrow night.
I have been a moderator, I guess, ever since I've been on the board with Scope. I'm very grateful that it's now at MTSU because for years it was on the TSU campus down on Charlotte, and driving to Nashville, you know, has its moments. But what the students will actually do is go through a mock school board meeting where they will enact a regular meeting with students acting as director of schools, as board chair, as board members, as parents making presentations to the board. They will be given an issue to solve and actually have to debate and vote. So it's a very interesting process, and I've enjoyed every year that I've had the opportunity to be with these young people, and they rise to the occasion and they really get into the role playing. So it's a lot of fun. The other part after lunch is that each group selects a spokesperson, and each group has a question to defend or a question to oppose. So they literally, in the second half of the day, they have a debate with actually going through the pros and the cons. And it's very interesting because the students themselves, they gather as a group to formulate their positions and the reason they have the position. So it's a very interesting process, and I'm pleased to have so many from our county involved. I think this is only the second year that our students have been involved in, Ms. Joyce. So, but if you happen not to be busy that day, if you would like to come and participate, I'm sure the TSBA will find a place for you. If you have questions, please contact me about that too. Okay. Number 9, Mr. Odom.
Number 9 is financial matters, and this is requesting additional staff move to the $35 per month phone reimbursement. And the person will be Tyra Pilgrim, who actually replace Kay Nixon in this case. So Mr. Zagle is requesting that Tyra Pilgrim, our instructional department career and technical education coordinator, be added to the list of those who are eligible to receive a $35 per month reimbursement towards the cost of their personal cell phones for work purposes. Ms. Pilgrim is our new CTE coordinator, replacing recently retired Kay Nixon. This position requires her to be added in schools on a regular basis. Recommend approval. The motion is to approve adding Tyra Pilgrim, the CTE coordinator, to the list of those who are eligible to receive a $35 per month reimbursement towards the cost of their personal cell phones for work purposes.
Anybody? Good. Okay. Number 10, we have an insurance meeting tomorrow at 1, I believe. So, I did not bring the agenda, Ms. Barnes. Is there anything of any consequence?
Look like routine business for tomorrow.
I do plan to attend. The insurance meeting, if you're interested in attending, is at 1 o'clock in the commission meeting room. I guess that's what they call it, or the courthouse meeting room. So feel free to join me if you'd like. So again, at 1 o'clock. Average is usually somewhere around a half hour to an hour in most cases. Okay. Mr. Hodge, the bills are coming fast and furious as our Tennessee Legislative Network representative.
Can I give you a report tomorrow night?
Okay. Yes, sir.
I don't have anything official to present.
Okay.
I think everybody got the email Mr. Oldham sent originally earlier in the week, and I got a response back and shared it with the board today.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That one item, the energy efficiency deal for charter schools, they pulled it off the table, so, which is good news. I guess that's one less thing to worry about. But
Yes,
I can honestly say, I mean, really anything that's up there doesn't surprise me anymore. The unfortunate part is you have to, it seems like anymore, watch it 24/7 what's going on down there. And if you don't watch it, there's no telling what they'll slip through there. So hopefully I'll bring some information tomorrow night in regards to education. We can continue to move forward. I know we got snowed out last week, and I don't know if they'll reschedule that again or not, but it still may not be a bad idea for us to make our own trip down there.
Yes, sir.
I've still got a lot of questions, one-on-one questions myself versus a group question. I'd be in favor of that if any other board members are too.
I certainly would be. So I'm getting nods. So yes, sir, we would join you in that. I will also try to have for you a list of bills that TSBA has taken position either in supporting or opposing or not having an opinion. So I'll try to have that for you too. But that's coming from the executive board from TSBA, so I'll try to share that with you here soon too.
You can bring tomorrow, if you can get access to it, we'll get.
I don't know that I can, but I will. Yes, sir. I'll try to get that to you as quickly as possible.
They've actually closed the introduction of new bills, so it's set other than their amendments or rewriting it, but they can't introduce more. So whatever we have now should be pretty good listing.
We'll know what we're working with
I think
or
so.
against.
I think so.
Okay.
I want to say, while we're in that topic, my compliments to Terry and to Don both on their efforts. Both of them expressed concerns about legislation and the responses that we got back. And Terry, you may be going into this in more detail, but and I'll let you do that. But just outstanding job to both of you because it got results. So.
And we're still trying to pick out the ones that harm us most. too, I think, you know, so, and, good, thank you. Okay, Federal Relations Network, our representative is Mr. Holliday.
Well, the big effort there is that we are scheduled for a vote, perhaps on Friday, on what we call H.R. 5, which is the House resolution for reauthorization on Elementary Secondary Education Act. You know, in a work session format, and I may not have a whole lot to say tomorrow night, but in a work session format, one of the things that I've kind of thought about is there's a lot of criticism for H.R. 5, and some of it is pretty appropriate. H.R. 5 is really a retread of legislation that came to the House in 2011, 2012, 2013, 14, and in 14, they actually passed it through the House, but it could never be taken up in the Senate, because of the Democratic leadership in the Senate. We expect, or I would expect, that the Republicans who all voted in favor of this piece of legislation a year ago from the state of Tennessee will all vote in favor of it this time. The Democrats will all vote against it. That's probably the way that will occur. Then we'll look at the Senate and what may come from the Senate. I personally am a little more optimistic from the Senate perspective that they're really trying to find something new in reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Some folks have characterized this as a continuation of No Child Left Behind, and it's really not. There are elements of No Child Left Behind that are there, but there are elements of the original 1968 legislation that is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And so this is reauthorization of the federal dollars and how they will come to education. Without this, I think it's worth noting that without this, we remain in a place where the Secretary of Education, an appointed position, negotiates with the Commissioner of Education, an appointed position here in the state of Tennessee, and those two individuals work out a plan in the waiver system that we've been under for the past 7 years or so. Any type of legislation from our elected representatives, I kind of think is better than an edict from appointed individuals. So hopefully we'll find that to be the case, but we certainly need to keep an eye on it. Senator Alexander and his staff are certainly listening to what we have to say, and I think the Senate can be very, very critical in having the right type of legislation come from this. So what the House is doing is essentially what they did last year and the year before that and the year before that, which is a bill that may be characterized as kind of lukewarm. There's some bad things in it, there's some good things in it, but it's not perfect by any means. That's what I'll share.
Monday we received a document that came down that put the House version, Senate version side by side, current version, comments after. The one thing that we're seeing that's concerning for us as a staff, we've even discussed it this week, is that Title I portability. And in effect, what that does is you take the dollars that you get for Title I, and then everybody that's free reduced or basically falls under that, you divide the dollars to wherever that child attends school, any one of our schools, and that follows that child. But by the time you do that division, you know, if you've got a central magnet or you've got some others where the poverty level is low, 20% or something like that, there's not a whole lot of total dollars. But in order to accomplish that, that money is going to come from the Smyrna Elementaries where you've got 80-something%. The War Waldrons you were at last night with 80-something% poverty in ESL because, I mean, they'll earn what they have, but they're not huge schools necessarily in the scheme of things like a high school or something else. So if you're not very careful, what happens, you have the money is attached to all these children, but it's not enough monies anywhere to have the programs that we currently have, where we have school-wide versus that individual serves. So that's in both bills.
It is.
So it has a very, very, kind of a high likelihood of going through, so that one worries me.
It is, and what you and I have had previous conversations about is, does that money, is it restricted to instruction just to that student? That was the one point that we were able to get across to Senator Alexander, and we kind of won that battle. Once it comes to the school can use it in any way they want to, but you're exactly right. Both bills do have the provision where the money goes to the school where the student is enrolled. But it doesn't have to be used specifically for that student. It can still, because Mr. Odom, you've said, if we've got somebody there that's helping, they're going to help whoever is in need. And so once we pay for that individual that's in helping. Others have expressed concern, and there is language in the bill that says that it can also follow to a private charter school. But take note of the language as it is right now, and it can be amended, and we need to be vigilant to watch that. A private charter school that is still authorized by the local education association, it's not going to a private school outside of public education. Now, that can be amended. There are those who have it in their desire to take Title I funds and allow it to go outside of public education. We have to watch out for that. And that's the battle, that I see, is does that amendment come to bear? But you're exactly right. It will change because there's a threshold right now, and we only identify certain schools as
10 Title I schools.
right.
See, our issue was in several of our schools, if you take it, and you wanted, say, an interventionist or somebody to really concentrate on these high-need kids, there's not enough money there to pay a teacher's salary with the model where you spread it thinly everywhere rather than concentrate it in your 10 most needy schools. So that's what bothers us in that.
Another item we've had discussions on it with our interventionists in our RTI program. We will have to look at supplanting issues, which is big in your Title I especially. And then another thing that we're kind of keeping our eyes out for, there have been suggestions by the state, and at times there have been pushes by the state to move the actual accounting for that money to the schools. We do not have, in some schools we do, but we often do not have bookkeepers with the accounting skills to handle that. So they're both on the federal side and then how it gets interpreted by the state, we'll have to be on the lookout for.
I think that interpretation, and perhaps this may be a place where we would apply from Rutherford County for an individual waiver, with the State Board of Education in how it's interpreted in Rutherford County, and we may find favor in that regard. I don't know if a state waiver could circumvent what federal policy says, but maybe in that area of interpretation we may find opportunity.
I think you said something about Perkins the last time you spoke. Is that a completely separate issue?
Senator Alexander, in personal conversations, said that he believes that the White House and the Republican leadership of Congress are so far apart in Perkins that the best course of action is to let Perkins continue as it is today in perpetual reauthorization until there is a possible change in White House administration.
Our CTE people, Ms. Pilgrim and Mr. Lewis, are working now on a Perkins Reserve grant. It's one of the reasons I sent that, which you saw dealing with that, because that's what we've used to develop our mechatronics programs. This year they're looking at things for IT programs, which is another thing the Chamber of Commerce has requested of us to try to do that. So I was just concerned that you might have some state legislation that start popping up that could start impacting those grant-type funds that lets us do what we've been able to do in the past, but they are currently working on a reserve grant. Doesn't mean you're going to get it, because it's a competitive grant, but we've been fairly successful in the past.
There is in general a perspective between competitive funding versus automatic funding or authorized funding. Authorized funding being funding that's based on some metric of student population or the free and reduced population or whatever it may be, and competitive funding being grants and such. Think Race to the Top. Everyone says we're going to change these things, we're going to do these things, but only one person actually gets the carrot. And so there's a lot of Washington thinking that competitive grants get more accomplished with less dollars. Likewise, I think at the state level, they kind of look at that and say, hey, we could try this as well. If we put money out there in a competitive grant kind of format, then lots of change happens trying to get that money, but we only have to give the money to one person as kind of a prize. And that's not really good thinking because, number one, there are rural parts of our state, there are rural systems, small systems that quite frankly just do not have the capacity to accomplish sophisticated grant writing and those type of proposals in order to impress those who are assessing that and deliver the money. Those folks still need funding, and there should be a level of automatic funding so that in rural Tennessee we have career and technical programs and other things that they need. That's not necessarily a position that helps our system, but it's more of a holistic perspective for our state. That being said, I think to protect our own house, we need to make sure that we absolutely recruit and keep the very best grant writers we can get a hold of and value them strongly within our system because we will need those skills.
We missed out on an opportunity because of the weather to meet our new Commissioner of Education.
That is being rescheduled. Now, Ms. Michael, if you happen to remind me, I sent it to the two principals today. And what was the date? March 2nd? I think it's next week again, and they sent us a schedule to do, but it's different than the other one. So I'll have to respond to them tomorrow and see if we can work that out because Ms. Goodwin did say same two schools, they picked the same two schools, but did change the schedule based upon the commissioner's time schedule. Starts in the morning. It's just different this time.
Well, my perception as far as in the infancy of her service, that we're going to appreciate and respect her ability probably quite a bit more than we did the former commissioner. So we'll see how that goes. Okay. All right, we're at general discussion.
Any discussion, have we decided to try to meet with the state legislatures again? And I know we discussed that earlier, and maybe it's too early to discuss it now, but what is happening, or, well, alarming, maybe too strong a word, but I would like to think we could meet with them before, next January or at the end of the session. I know we discussed it, and did we decide to discuss it at a later time? So it's probably too early to.
Well, I don't know that it's too early. The issue, I believe, is trying to get them together with all of the legislation that they're being pursued. Like Mr. Hodge was saying, that maybe we could go as a group on our own, rather than as a TSBA trip. It would be Rutherford County that we just jump in our cars and run down and go visit each one in their office. Hopefully we have a timed appointment. How would you feel about that?
How would I feel about that? That may be a lot more cumbersome than, but I don't know. I really don't know. I just, and it may be a total waste. I don't know how much we're actually accomplishing, and I met with them many years with the steering committee, and I do know that when you meet with them in January, and that's fine, and you don't meet again until the following January, you certainly lose something with that long length of time. But I just thought I'd throw it out there, and then whatever you want to do is fine.
There's another possibility, and I fell into this one, didn't know it was going to happen. The Chamber of Commerce has a series of meetings that they invite up. The legislatures come and have a question-answer session early, usually 7:30 in the morning for an hour and a half, 2 hours or something. And they had worked out, actually Musselburgh City had worked out with our legislators there to come and sit with us, the chamber upstairs. They said, would you like to come up? I said, well, sure. I didn't know they had set it up, but we can look on the calendar when the next one for the Chamber of Commerce, if that's a desire of yours to do, that we just have to tell the legislators, if you've got a few minutes in chamber, if you've got a room, we could sit in. If they come to that meeting, it might be an ideal situation, and that way they're here anyway, and typically they've got an hour or so, depending on the day. We could try. They usually do it on a Friday, which is when they're not in session, typically, but sometimes they have other meetings, but typically those sessions are on a Friday. It'll be in the chambers we can look on the website and see where it is.
I think that would be expedient.
When I saw what happened last time, I thought, that's not bad.
Mr. Jordan, I'd be pleased to give you a wake-up call too, so.
Fine.
Ms. Estes would appreciate that. Anybody else?
General discussion?
Yes, sir.
I didn't have the time, but I took the time to do a little bit of looking. Over the last week, there has been some conversation about priorities, and I've received some emails that have questioned priorities in Rutherford County schools and making sure that education versus athletics, academics versus character, and all of those things, just how those priorities work out. And I thought about it and checked with Miss Paula Barnes today. I was correct. We do not have a job description in Rutherford County for a coach. We have job descriptions for teachers, and we do have a coach's code of ethics, and that's what Mr. Odom is pointing out to me, and it's in the Administrative Rules and Regulations, Guidelines, and Procedures Handbook, and it's been provided by our athletic director to all kinds of people in positions. But what I really was impressed by and wanted to make sure was clear is that our first priority is to teach. And no matter what other activities we may be doing, we need to always be thinking about what it is we're teaching, because we're always teaching something. Also, from that federal kind of perspective, I benefited from the opportunity to see people who said, we're looking, in Washington, D.C., we're looking at the state of Tennessee for effective education reform. There's a lot of talk about education reform, but how that actually happens and how it impacts and how it raises a state in the NAEP standards by substantial measure. Washington, D.C., our nation is looking at the state of Tennessee and saying they're doing it somewhat effectively in Tennessee. And when they come to Nashville and they say, can you show us how that's done effectively, they take then the eyes of the nation and they focus them on Rutherford County. And I truly believe that what we're doing in Rutherford County is a pebble in the pond of education reform, and the ripples will go across this nation. Unfortunately, there's no better example of that than some negative publicity that has come our way recently. When we do something right, it has ramifications across the nation. When we do something wrong, it has ramifications across the nation. That is a new perspective for Rutherford County. And what we should take away from that is not that we should do anything less or change anything. We're still going to have athletic state championships and athletic achievement and excellence. We just have a responsibility now, a fresh perspective of responsibility to do it with the highest level of ethics that we've ever been called on in the past. Mr. Odom, the actions that you have taken today as a board member, I applaud you for those. And I further went and took a look in comparison for the one employee of Rutherford County Schools that I have some influence over, and that's Mr. Odom. The director of schools in Knox County has 57,000 students. He has 1 year of classroom or administrative experience, and he makes $232,000 a year. The director of schools in Williamson County has 34,000 students. He has 9.5 years of classroom or administrative experience. He makes $190,000 a year. The director of schools in Davidson County, 83,000 students, 13 years in the classroom or as a principal administrator, $253,000 a year. Hamilton County, Chattanooga, 13 years in the classroom or as an administrator, 41,000 students, 832, very similar to our system, makes $190,000 a year. In Rutherford County, we have Don Odom, 41,500 students, 31 years as a classroom teacher or administrator in our system, 45 years with Rutherford County Schools. He makes $143,000 a year. I'm very proud that Don Odom is the director of schools in Rutherford County. You are a bargain. Thank you.
What we would ask, Mr. Odom, is that you not take the hours that you commit each week to our system and divide it into your salary, because we might have a wage and hour issue, so you can't less than minimum wage, so.
That's true of teachers and principals
Amen.
everywhere.
That's right.
They'll all tell you the same thing.
Right, and I would also say how much I respect your not only your leadership, but your ability, and I've heard it so many times that you read data like no one else, like no one else, and we continue to be grateful to have you serve the system and be able to work with you. Thank you, Mr. Holliday.
I question maybe how many coaches, and we have many all over this county, that have actually read this coach's code of ethics that's in front of me here, and I don't know.
Ms. Barnes, tell you what we
They may,
do.
I bet they've all got a copy.
You'll let her,
Well, I hope our intent was for the principals to deliver this. For several years, we actually held meetings here in this room and brought all the coaches in and went over that information. And then we started distributing it through the principals to have the meetings with their coaches at the school, so they caught all coaches of all sports. And Mr. Tackett this year has taken on that responsibility to make sure it's distributed and shared with all of our coaches.
he assures me that he drove this document home.
Would it add some credence to this document if it actually had to sign?
Good idea.
There is an acknowledgement form that they complete at the conclusion of the training when they go over all this information, and it goes in their personnel file.
Pardon me just a minute, Mr. Chairman, and this, of course, is long, and there's 9 suggestions are based on principles here and so forth. But I just want to read these last 6 lines just for the general public in the paragraph. The coach must be aware that he or she occupies a position of great influence on the education of a student athlete, and therefore should never place the value of winning above the value of instilling the highest ideals of character. Coaches must uphold the honor and dignity of their position in all contacts with student athletes, officials, school administrators, competitors, and the public. Coaches shall set an example of the highest ethical and moral conduct. And then it lists some principles here. It might be a good idea to read those every morning, maybe for all those.
I would not disagree, Mr. Jordan. The other thing I think we should point out, maybe should be highlighted, that student athlete and student always should come first.
Always.
Thank you. That's, appreciate you emphasizing that. That's certainly well done. Anything else tonight, sir? Okay. Again, we're having back-to-back, and I can't tell if the weather has moved. You may be up a little while tonight, or maybe early in the morning to make a decision. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of students and employees curious about what decision you do or do not make in the morning.
We have, and I get asked this all the time, might be a good time to say it. We originally had 11 days, we've used 6. There are 5 stockpile days remaining as of tonight.
And then two days are used for professional.
PLC, we divide that up into 4 half-days of PLC. They'll allow you to use those days for in-service type training too, which PLCs have considered that with teachers working on data together.
And of course, the stockpile days were here well before I had the honor to serve, but whoever put that in place, because I think Metro Davidson County have already used all theirs, and now they're talking about either going into other breaks and maybe weekends or into the summer. So I'm pleased that we have those days just in case. And we've used them in the past, not just for ice and snow. We've used them for flooding and when the temperatures just got too low. So,
The region tournament, I know this will air tomorrow morning, so, but general public needs to know. I don't know anything about what will happen tomorrow. They're not playing tonight. So if they play tomorrow night, the finals will have to be Friday, and the sub-state is scheduled for Saturday. So some girls' team and two girls' teams actually will have to play Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, which is unprecedented that I know of. Maybe it's happened before, but I don't remember. Boys sub-state's not till Monday, so I guess you could play Sunday if you have to, but or put it off till Monday along with boys sub-state. That's none of my business. But girls' state starts next Wednesday, and coaches like to practice, and they like to get together and have some time. So I think we're getting pretty pressed here. So we need to stop the snow at all costs. No more snow.
The Smyrna is the host,
Right.
for this, and they received a call this morning from Lawrence County, which is the one that was to come up here and play, and asked us, is there any way you could make an adjustment in that? And so the TSSAA is driving much of this now because of the schedule that you just mentioned. And so their intent is they did put it off today, Lawrence County's request, so they could come and play. They're looking at tomorrow, which this may be aired after that, but if the road's clear enough, supposed to get, 38, well, I don't know, they're not saying now necessarily above freezing, but they were hoping that they might play the game up in the day sometime, maybe a little after noon or something like that, to try to get those in and include all the teams. So you've got some people that's heading it up at Smyrna High and all that are working really hard, and Mr. Tackett, to try to make it work as best we can. They're giving it every effort. With safety in mind, though, that's it.
I'm pleased that we're concerned about students from other areas, not just from our community too. So they're all pressured. So. Anybody else? Well, be safe going home. I don't know if it's doing anything yet, but again, take your time. Be safe. Okay. See you tomorrow evening. We stand adjourned.